Marcus Chen had been working the asteroid mining station for 3 years when the escape pod crashed into his life. The tiny craft barely made it past the station's defensive grid before emergency systems kicked in, dragging the damaged vessel into the cargo bay. Marcus was the only human on duty that shift, his alien crewmates either sleeping or maintaining equipment in the lower decks. The pod was unlike anything he had seen before. Its hull shimmered with an organic quality, as if grown rather than built. Strange symbols pulsed weakly along its surface, and the metal felt warm to his touch despite having traveled through the cold vacuum of space. When the hatch finally opened with a soft hiss, Marcus stepped back in surprise. 3 small beings tumbled out, no bigger than human children. Their skin was a pale blue-gray color, and their large eyes dominated delicate faces. They wore simple clothing that seemed to shift color in the station's artificial light. The smallest one couldn't have been more than 5 years old in human terms, while the oldest appeared to be around 12. The children huddled together, clearly frightened and exhausted. Marcus knelt down slowly, keeping his movements gentle and non-threatening. He had learned enough alien languages during his time in space to attempt basic communication, but these beings spoke in rapid musical tones he didn't recognize. Then something remarkable happened. The middle child, a girl with silver markings around her eyes, looked directly at Marcus and spoke a single word in perfect English. "Father?" Marcus felt his heart skip. The word carried such hope and desperation that he couldn't help but respond to it. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." The 3 children immediately rushed to him, clinging to his mining suit with surprising strength. They chattered excitedly in their own language, occasionally throwing in English words they seemed to know instinctively. Marcus found himself overwhelmed by their trust and need. Over the next few hours, Marcus learned more about his unexpected visitors. The oldest, who introduced himself as Zephyr, could speak broken English and served as translator for his siblings. The girl was called Lyra, and the youngest boy was Kai. They had been traveling with their mother when their ship was attacked by something they called the Dark Hunters. "Mother put us in the sleep pod," Zephyr explained. His large eyes filled with worry. "She said find the human father. She said you would know what to do." Marcus was confused by this reference to a human father, but he couldn't turn away 3 lost children. He contacted his supervisor and requested emergency asylum protocols, claiming the children were refugees from a ship disaster. The bureaucratic process would take time, but it would give him legal grounds to care for them temporarily. The children adapted quickly to life on the mining station. They were incredibly intelligent, learning new English words every day and showing a natural understanding of human technology. Kai, despite being the youngest, could operate the station's entertainment systems better than some of the adult crew members. Lyra had an artistic talent, creating beautiful drawings of space phenomena she claimed to remember from her travels. But it was their behavior toward Marcus that puzzled him most. They didn't just see him as a caretaker or protector. They genuinely seemed to believe he was their father. They would curl up next to him during rest periods, seek his approval for everything they did, and defend him fiercely when other crew members questioned his decision to take them in. The station's chief medical officer, Dr. Wellspring, examined the children and declared them healthy but unusual. Their DNA contained elements she had never seen before, and their neural activity showed patterns that suggested enhanced cognitive abilities. Most interesting was their apparent immunity to the various diseases and pathogens that affected other species on the station. "These aren't ordinary refugee children," Dr. Wellspring told Marcus privately. "Their physiology suggests they come from a highly advanced species. And there's something else odd about their genetic markers. Some of the sequences are almost familiar, like I've seen them before in human subjects." Marcus dismissed this as coincidence, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the children's story than they had revealed. Their mother remained a mystery, and their references to the human father suggested a connection he didn't understand. As days passed, the children began displaying abilities that amazed the entire crew. Zephyr could solve complex mathematical equations in his head, often correcting the station's navigation computer when it made minor errors. Lyra seemed to have an empathic connection with the station's various alien crew members, somehow understanding their emotional states even across species barriers. Kai demonstrated an uncanny ability to predict mechanical failures before they occurred, saving the station from several potentially dangerous malfunctions. The crew began to whisper among themselves. These weren't just gifted children. They were something unprecedented, and their attachment to Marcus, a relatively ordinary human miner, raised questions that no one could answer. One evening, as Marcus was helping Kai with his reading lessons, the boy looked up at him with those impossibly large eyes and asked a question that chilled him to the bone. "Father, when will Mother come back for us?" Marcus had been avoiding this topic, hoping the children would adjust to their new life and stop asking about their missing mother. But Kai's innocent question reminded him that these children were waiting for someone who might never return. "I don't know, little one," Marcus said honestly, "but until she does, I'll take care of you." Kai smiled and hugged him tightly. "Mother said you would say that. She said humans always protect what they love, even when they don't understand why." That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about the boy's words. How could their mother have known how he would react? How could she have been so certain that a random human would care for her children? And why did the children seem to fit so naturally into his life, as if they had always belonged there? Unknown to Marcus, deep in space, something was tracking the energy signature of the escape pod. The dark hunters that had attacked the children's ship were still searching, and they had picked up the trail. But they weren't the only ones following that signal. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, a ship unlike any other was also heading toward the mining station. Its pilot had been searching for 3 very special children and the human who had been chosen to protect them. The reunion that was coming would change everything Marcus thought he knew about himself and his place in the universe. The children's mother was finally coming home. 2 weeks after the children arrived, Marcus noticed they were becoming restless. Zephyr would stand at the observation deck for hours, staring into space as if waiting for something. Lyra's drawings had changed from cheerful space scenes to darker images of ships and strange creatures she called shadow eaters. Even little Kai seemed anxious, often asking when they would see their mother again. The mining station's routine had adapted around the children. The crew, initially skeptical about having kids aboard, had grown fond of them. Chief Engineer, Corvash, a massive reptilian being, would spend his off hours teaching Zephyr about advanced propulsion systems. The botanical specialist, Dr. Green, enjoyed showing Lyra the hydroponics gardens where they grew fresh food. Even the stern security chief, Commander Torres, had softened toward them, but Marcus could see that the children were becoming more powerful. Their abilities weren't just impressive anymore, they were becoming difficult to hide. Zephyr had begun correcting the station's senior scientists during their briefings, politely pointing out errors in their calculations that turned out to be absolutely correct. Lyra had started predicting crew members' moods and needs before they even knew what they wanted themselves. Kai could now sense mechanical problems throughout the entire station, often alerting maintenance teams to issues that wouldn't have been discovered for days. Dr. Wellspring pulled Marcus aside one morning with a concerned expression. "We need to talk about the children's blood work," she said, leading him to her private office. "I've been running tests for 2 weeks, and the results are impossible." She showed him a series of holographic displays that meant nothing to Marcus but clearly troubled her. "Their cellular structure is changing," she explained. "It's like they're evolving in real time, adapting to our environment and technology. But more than that, their DNA is starting to show human markers that weren't there when they arrived." Marcus stared at the displays. "What does that mean?" "I think it means they're somehow becoming more human the longer they're with you. It's as if their genetics are responding to your presence specifically. I've never seen anything like it in 20 years of xenobiology." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red warning lights flashed as the crew rushed to emergency stations. Commander Torres's voice echoed through the communication system. "All hands to battle stations. Unknown vessels approaching. This is not a drill." Marcus ran toward the command center, but the children reached him first. They moved with surprising speed and coordination, surrounding him in the corridor outside the medical bay. "Father, the Dark Hunters have found us," Zephyr said, his young face grave with worry. "They're coming for us." Through the station's viewing ports, Marcus could see them, 5 black ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with an unnatural fluid motion, like living creatures rather than mechanical vessels. As they approached, the station's lights began to dim, and several crew members reported feeling suddenly weak and disoriented. "These ships drain life energy," Lyra said, her silver markings glowing faintly. They feed on it. That's why they want us. We have something they need. The lead ship sent a transmission that bypassed all the station's communication protocols, speaking directly into everyone's minds with a voice like grinding metal. Surrender the hybrid offspring. They belong to the collective. Resistance will result in consumption. Commander Torres ordered the station's defensive systems activated, but the weapons had no effect on the dark ships. Energy beams passed harmlessly through their hulls, and missile strikes seemed to be absorbed without damage. It became clear that conventional warfare would not work against these enemies. Then something unexpected happened. Kai stepped forward and placed his small hand on a control panel in the corridor. The entire station's power grid responded to his touch, increasing efficiency and redirecting energy in ways the engineers had never thought possible. The lights brightened and the crew members began to feel stronger. "We can help," Zephyr said to Marcus. "But you have to trust us completely. And you have to understand that once we do this, everything will change." Marcus looked at the three children who had called him father from the moment they met. Despite everything strange about their situation, he realized that he did trust them completely. More than that, he loved them as if they really were his own children. "Do what you need to do," he said. The children joined hands and closed their eyes. Immediately, the station's systems began operating at levels far beyond their design specifications. Shields that had been adequate suddenly became impenetrable barriers. Engines that could barely move the station began generating enough power to escape the approaching threat. Most remarkably, the station itself seemed to come alive, responding to the crew's needs before they could even ask. But the Dark Hunters weren't giving up. The lead ship began changing shape, extending tendrils of shadow that reached toward the station despite the shields. Where the tendrils touched the barriers, energy began draining away and several crew members collapsed. "They're too strong," Lyra said, strain showing in her voice. "We need Mother." As if summoned by her words, a new ship appeared on the scanner. This vessel was everything the dark ships were not. Bright, organic, and radiating warmth and life. It moved with graceful purpose, positioning itself between the station and the attackers. A new voice entered everyone's minds, but this one brought comfort instead of fear. "My children, you have done well. Stand down and let Mother handle this." The ship opened like a flower, revealing weapons that fired pure life energy instead of destruction. Where the beams struck the Dark Hunters, their shadow hulls began to burn with brilliant light. The attacking ships recoiled, their drain effect reversing as they were forced to give back the energy they had stolen. Within minutes, the Dark Hunters were retreating, their ship smoking and crackling with residual light energy. The mysterious mothership followed them part way, ensuring they were truly gone before returning to the station. Marcus stood with the children in the observation lounge, watching as the beautiful vessel approached their docking bay. The children were excited but also nervous, chattering in their musical language while keeping close to his side. "She's really here," Kai whispered, pressing against Marcus's leg. Mother came back. A docking tube extended from the visitor ship, and Marcus found himself walking toward the airlock with the children. His heart was racing with questions and anticipation. Who was this woman who had trusted him with her children? How had she known to come at exactly the right moment? And why did the children seem to need both of them? The airlock cycled, and Marcus prepared to meet the mother of the three beings he had come to love as his own children. What he would discover would challenge everything he thought he knew about family, love, and his own identity. The door opened, and Marcus Chen's life changed forever. The woman who stepped through the airlock was breathtakingly beautiful, in a way that seemed to transcend species. She stood about 6 feet tall, with the same pale blue-gray skin as the children, but marked with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift and flow across her body. Her hair was long and white, moving as if underwater, and her eyes held depths that reminded Marcus of staring into space itself. But what shocked him most was how familiar she seemed. There was something about her face, her movements, even the way she smiled that triggered memories he couldn't quite place. The children ran to her immediately, speaking rapidly in their musical language while she embraced them with obvious relief and joy. "My precious ones, she said in perfect English, her voice carrying harmonics that made Marcus's chest resonate. I am so proud of how brave you have been. She looked over their heads at Marcus, and when their eyes met, he felt a jolt of recognition so strong it made him stagger. She smiled at his reaction, a sad but knowing expression. Hello, Marcus, she said softly. My name is Serafina. Thank you for caring for our children. Our children? Marcus repeated, confusion evident in his voice. I don't understand. Serafina approached him slowly, the children staying close to both of them. Perhaps we should sit down. This will take some explaining. They made their way to the station's main conference room, where Commander Torres and Dr. Wellspring were waiting. The senior staff had insisted on being present for this first contact, though they maintained a respectful distance. Serafina began her story with the patience of someone who had told difficult truths before. 50 years ago, your Earth was visited by my people, the Ethereals. We are an ancient race, older than most of the civilizations in this galaxy. We had been watching humanity for centuries, fascinated by your potential. She gestured to the viewing port where stars twinkled in the darkness. Most species in the galaxy reach a certain level of development and then stagnate. They become content with their achievements and stop growing. But humans never stop pushing forward, never stop dreaming of something greater. This quality made you very special to us. Marcus listened intently as she continued. My people decided to conduct an experiment. We wanted to see what might happen if we combined our advanced genetics with human determination and creativity. A small number of volunteers from Earth were selected for the program. Dr. Wellspring leaned forward. Are you saying there was a secret alien-human breeding program? Serafina nodded. The participants were told they were part of an advanced space exploration initiative. They lived on our ships for several years, contributing their genetic material to create a new generation of beings who could bridge the gap between our species. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What happened to these volunteers? After the program concluded, they were returned to Earth with their memories adjusted. They resumed their normal lives, believing they had simply spent time training for a space mission that was later canceled. They never knew they had children among the stars. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You're saying that Your father was one of our volunteers, Serafina said gently. Marcus Chen Sr. participated in our program when he was 22 years old. These children are your half-siblings, Marcus. That's why they recognized you instantly, why they called you father. Your genetic signature is close enough to trigger their familial bonding instincts. The room fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Marcus stared at the three children who had changed his life, seeing them in an entirely new light. They weren't just alien refugees he had helped. They were family in the truest sense. But why bring them to me now? Marcus asked. Why not sooner? Serafina's expression darkened. Because the galaxy is not safe for them. There are forces that want to exploit their abilities. The Dark Hunters you encountered are just one group. Our hybrid children represent something new and powerful, and there are those who would use them as weapons or drain their life energy for their own purposes. She stood and walked to the viewing port, her silver markings pulsing softly. I have been protecting 12 such children for the past 20 years, moving them from place to place, keeping them hidden. But the threats are growing stronger, and I realized they needed something I couldn't give them alone. What's that? Marcus asked. Human connection, human values, the part of themselves that comes from Earth. She turned back to him, her ancient eyes filled with emotion. You see, the children aren't just genetically human in part. They're culturally adrift. They have incredible abilities, but they lack the moral foundation that makes humans special. They need to understand concepts like sacrifice, loyalty, and unconditional love. These aren't things that can be taught through genetics alone. Zephyr, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. Mother tried to teach us, but she said only a real human could show us how to be human. She said we needed to understand where half of ourselves came from. Lyra nodded eagerly. That's why she searched for you, Father Marcus. She said the bloodline would help us bond. but your heart would teach us what we really needed to learn. Marcus looked at these three remarkable beings and realized that everything he had felt for them over the past 2 weeks made sense now. The instant connection, the protective instincts, the pride he felt in their achievements. It wasn't just kindness toward alien refugees. It was the recognition of family calling to family across the vast emptiness of space. "There's something else," Serafina said hesitantly. "The experiment wasn't just about creating powerful children. It was about preparing for a greater threat. My people are ancient, but we're also dying. Our species has become too advanced, too removed from the basic drives that fuel growth and change. We've gained incredible knowledge, but we've lost the fire that pushes evolution forward." She gestured to the children. "These hybrids represent hope for both our species. They have our knowledge and abilities, but also human passion and determination. When the great darkness comes, and it is coming, they may be the only beings capable of standing against it." Commander Torres, who had been silent throughout the explanation, finally spoke. "What kind of darkness are you talking about?" Serafina's expression became grave. "An ancient evil that consumes entire civilizations. It turns advanced species against each other, feeds on conflict and despair, and leaves nothing but empty worlds in its wake. It has been dormant for millennia, but our instruments show it stirring again. When it fully awakens, it will spread across the galaxy like a plague." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. These weren't just children he was caring for. They were potentially the galaxy's best hope for survival, and somehow his human heritage was a crucial part of that hope. "What do you need from me?" he asked simply. Serafina smiled, and for the first time since she had arrived, she looked truly hopeful. "Help me raise them. Teach them what it means to be human. Show them the values that make your species so remarkable. Together we can prepare them for what's coming." As if to emphasize the importance of the moment, little Kai took Marcus's hand in one of his own, and Serafina's in the other. "Now we're a real family," he said with the simple wisdom of childhood. Looking down at the boy, then at Lyra and Zephyr, and finally at Serafina, Marcus realized that he had found something he never knew he was searching for. Purpose, family, and a chance to help save the galaxy, all delivered to him by 3 alien children who had called him father from the moment they met. Over the following months, life aboard the mining station transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Serafina's ship docked permanently with the station, creating a combined vessel that was part industrial facility and part advanced alien technology. The integration wasn't just mechanical. It was organic, with ethereal biotechnology literally growing into the station's systems. Marcus found himself living in a reality that challenged everything he thought he knew about parenting. Relationships and his own capabilities. Serafina shared quarters with him and the children, creating a family unit that was both alien and surprisingly normal. They established routines, shared meals, and worked together to educate the children in both human and ethereal knowledge. The children flourished under this combined care. Zephyr's mathematical abilities expanded to include theoretical physics that impressed even Serafina. He could now visualize 11-dimensional space and calculate hyperspace navigation routes in his head. But more importantly, Marcus taught him about human concepts of justice and fairness. When the boy suggested using his abilities to simply take what the family needed rather than asking for it, Marcus helped him understand why cooperation and respect were more valuable than power. Lyra's empathic abilities had grown stronger, allowing her to sense the emotional states of beings across the entire station. She became a bridge between species, helping resolve conflicts and misunderstandings before they escalated. Marcus taught her about compassion and the importance of privacy, showing her how to use her gifts to help rather than invade. Together, they established protocols for her abilities that respected others, while still allowing her to provide assistance when needed. Little Kai had become the station's unofficial mascot and technical genius. His ability to commune with mechanical systems had evolved into something approaching technomancy. He could now interface with any computer system through touch, upgrading software and optimizing performance in ways that seemed magical. Marcus made sure the boy understood the responsibility that came with such power, teaching him about consent and the importance of asking before making changes to other people's property. But it was the relationship between Marcus and Serafina that surprised everyone the most, including themselves. What had begun as a partnership in child rearing had evolved into something deeper. Despite their different species, they found themselves drawn to each other in ways that transcended biology. "I never expected this," Serafina confided to Marcus one evening as they watched the children play in the station's recreational area. Her silver markings pulsed softly, a sign of contentment he had learned to recognize. "My people mate for life, but we choose partners based on genetic compatibility and intellectual matching. What I feel for you is different." Marcus understood. "Humans call it love," he said simply. "It doesn't always make logical sense, but it's real." The station's crew had adapted to their unusual family with remarkable flexibility. Commander Torres had become like an uncle to the children, teaching them about strategy and leadership. Dr. Wellspring continued her studies of their unique physiology, while also serving as their pediatrician. Even the gruff chief engineer Corvash had softened, often found playing complex technical games with Zephyr or helping Kai understand the station's more intricate systems, but their peaceful existence was interrupted when long-range sensors detected something troubling. A fleet of ships was approaching, larger and more diverse than anything the mining station had ever seen. When the lead vessel hailed them, the message came in multiple languages and from multiple sources. "Attention Hybrid Sanctuary," the transmission began. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Coalition, in joint operation with the Galactic Protection Alliance. We have come to discuss the children's future." Marcus felt his world shift again. Admiral Chen, his aunt, his father's sister, whom he hadn't seen in over a decade, the woman who had been told her brother had died in a training accident during his participation in what was supposedly a canceled space program. The fleet that docked with their station represented dozens of species from across the galaxy, but it was Admiral Chen who commanded Marcus's attention as she stepped through the airlock. She was in her 50s now, her hair silver and her bearing ramrod straight. When she saw Marcus, her composed military demeanor cracked for just a moment. "Marcus," she said, disbelief in her voice. "What are you doing here?" "We were told the children were being cared for by..." Understanding dawned in her eyes as she noticed the family resemblance between him and the three young hybrids. The reunion in the conference room was emotional and complicated. Admiral Chen learned the truth about her brother's death and discovered she had 3 extraordinary great-nieces and nephew. But she also brought news that changed everything. "The hybrid children aren't just special," she explained, displaying holographic star charts that showed spreading areas of darkness. "They're necessary. This ancient enemy Serafina warned you about, we call it the Void Hunger, has awakened ahead of schedule. It's already consumed 3 star systems and our combined fleets can't stop it." The images were horrifying. Entire planets reduced to empty husks, their life energy drained away to feed something that existed between dimensions. Advanced civilizations that had stood for millennia were falling in a matter of days. "Our best scientists, both human and alien, have studied the threat," Admiral Chen continued. "The Void Hunger feeds on life energy, but it's particularly drawn to advanced consciousness. The more sophisticated a species becomes, the more vulnerable they are to its influence. It turns their own development against them." Serafina nodded grimly. "That's why my people began the hybrid program. We realized that pure advancement without the balancing force of human emotion and determination creates a vulnerability. The Void Hunger can't fully penetrate minds that are driven by illogical concepts like hope, love, and sacrifice." "But how can children fight something that destroys entire fleets?" Marcus asked, his protective instincts flaring at the thought of putting Zephyr, Lyra, and Kai in danger. Admiral Chen's expression softened as she looked at the 3 children, who had been listening to the adult conversation with remarkable composure. "Because they're not just children anymore. Show him." At Serafina's nod, the 3 siblings joined hands. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The conference room filled with a warm, golden light that seemed to strengthen everyone present. The light extended beyond the room, flowing through the station and even reaching into space itself. Every person and alien present felt renewed, energized, and filled with an inexplicable sense of hope and determination. Together, they generate something we're calling a life resonance field. Admiral Chen explained as the children released their connection. It doesn't just protect against the void hunger's drain. It actually reverses it, forcing the entity to give back the energy it has stolen. Zephyr stepped forward with the serious expression he wore when discussing important matters. We've been practicing, Father Marcus. Mother Seraphina has been teaching us to combine our abilities. We think we can help save everyone. Lyra nodded eagerly. The resonance field works better when we're with you and Mother. Your human emotions make our ethereal abilities stronger. Together, we're more than the sum of our parts. Little Kai, always the most direct of the three, simply said, "We want to help save the galaxy." Isn't that what families do? Marcus looked around the room at his aunt, at Seraphina, at the children who had changed his life, and at the diverse group of allies who had come together to face an unimaginable threat. He realized that his simple life as a miner had prepared him for something far more important than he had ever imagined. "Then we help save the galaxy," he said, his voice carrying the determination that had made humanity special in the first place. All of us together. The real battle was about to begin, and the fate of billions would depend on the love between a human man, an alien woman, and three extraordinary children who had called him father from the moment they met. The combined fleet that assembled around the mining station was the largest gathering of allied species in galactic history. Ships from hundreds of different worlds formed a defensive line as they prepared to face the void hunger. But at the center of it all was Marcus's family, the unlikely group that had become the galaxy's best hope for survival. The children had changed dramatically as they prepared for battle. While they still looked young, there was an ancient wisdom in their eyes now, as if they were accessing genetic memories from both their human and ethereal heritage. They moved with purpose and spoke with authority that made even experienced military commanders listen when they suggested tactical modifications. The void hunger isn't just an enemy, Zephyr explained to the assembled fleet commanders during their final briefing. It's a force of entropy itself. It feeds on the complexity that makes life meaningful. Consciousness, emotion, hope. That's why it's so drawn to advanced civilizations. Lyra had created detailed empathic maps, showing how the entity affected different species. It doesn't just drain life energy, she said, her young voice carrying weight beyond her apparent years. It corrupts the connections between living beings. It makes people suspicious, afraid, and willing to sacrifice others to save themselves. Kai, interfacing with the fleet's combined computer systems, had developed new tactical protocols that allowed ships from different species to coordinate perfectly, despite their varied technologies. But we can turn that against it, he said excitedly. If we can generate enough positive connections, enough hope and cooperation, we can create a resonance field that will force it back. Marcus stood with Seraphina as they watched their children address the greatest military minds in the galaxy. The transformation was remarkable. These were the same kids who had tumbled out of an escape pod just months ago, frightened and alone. Now they were teaching admirals and generals how to fight an enemy that had terrified the galaxy for eons. "Are you afraid?" Seraphina asked him quietly. Marcus considered the question honestly. "Terrified," he admitted, "but also proud. They're ready for this, aren't they?" "More than ready," she replied, her silver markings pulsing with confidence. "They have something no pure ethereal or pure human could possess. The perfect balance of knowledge and passion, wisdom and determination." The void hunger arrived 3 days later, and the sight of it chilled everyone who witnessed it. It wasn't a ship or creature in any conventional sense. Instead, it was a darkness that seemed to exist between dimensions, visible only as an absence of light and life. Where it passed, space itself seemed to die, stars dimming and planets becoming cold, lifeless rocks. The entity's influence preceded its physical presence. Across the fleet, crew members began reporting feelings of despair and hopelessness. Some species were more vulnerable than others. The most advanced civilizations found their people becoming increasingly paranoid and aggressive, turning their sophisticated weapons on each other, rather than the approaching threat. "It's happening exactly as predicted," Admiral Chen reported from the command ship. "The Catharian fleet has broken formation. The Zephyrian Council ships are refusing to coordinate with the others. The entity is turning our own sophistication against us." That's when the children acted. From their position on Seraphina's ship, they joined hands and began to generate the life resonance field they had been practicing. But this time, instead of filling just a room or station, The warm golden energy began spreading throughout the entire fleet. The effect was immediate and profound. Wherever the resonance field touched, the feelings of despair and suspicion lifted. Crew members who had been ready to fire on their allies suddenly remembered why they were fighting together. The advanced species that had been most affected by the Void Hunger's influence found their clarity returning, but the effort was enormous. Marcus could see the strain on the children's faces as they maintained the field across such a vast area. They needed help, and that's when the true genius of their hybrid nature became clear. Everyone who can hear this, Marcus broadcast across all fleet communication channels. Think about why you're here. Think about your families, your homes, the people you're fighting to protect. Think about hope. Across hundreds of ships and dozens of species, beings began focusing their thoughts on the things they loved most. The response was incredible. The children's resonance field, instead of weakening under the increased load, began growing stronger as it was fed by the positive emotions of millions of crew members. The Void Hunger, encountering this wall of coordinated hope and determination, seemed to recoil. For the first time in eons, the ancient entity faced something it couldn't simply drain and corrupt. "Now!" Zephyr called out, his voice somehow carrying across the entire fleet. "While it's vulnerable, all ships attack with everything you have." The combined firepower of the Galactic Alliance erupted across space in a coordinated barrage, unlike anything ever seen before. Energy beams, missile strikes, and exotic weapons from dozens of different technologies converged on the Void Hunger's position. But instead of simply attacking the entity directly, the weapons were enhanced by the children's resonance field, carrying positive life energy rather than just destructive force. The results were spectacular. Where the enhanced weapons struck, the darkness began to burn with brilliant light. The Void Hunger writhed and contracted, its form becoming visible for the first time as the life energy forced it into physical reality. It appeared as a massive, shifting shadow with tendrils that reached across solar systems, but now those tendrils were recoiling as if burned. Marcus felt the strain through his connection to the children. Maintaining the resonance field while under attack was pushing them to their limits. Seraphina's face was pale with concern as she monitored their vital signs. "They can't keep this up much longer," she warned. "The field is requiring too much energy." That's when Marcus realized what needed to happen. The children were powerful, but they were still just 3 individuals trying to generate hope for an entire galaxy. They needed the cooperation of every being in the fleet to make this work permanently. "Attention all ships," he broadcast again. "This isn't just about our weapons anymore. The children have shown us the way, but we all need to participate. Every person on every ship needs to contribute to the resonance field. Think about what makes life worth living. Think about what makes your species special. Think about why the galaxy is worth saving." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the fleet, beings from hundreds of different worlds began actively contributing their positive emotions and thoughts to the field. Human determination mixed with ethereal wisdom, Cytherian logic blended with Zephyrian compassion, and dozens of other qualities combined into something greater than any single species could achieve. The resonance field exploded outward, no longer just protecting the fleet but actively pushing back against the Void Hunger. The ancient entity, which had fed on the sophistication of advanced civilizations for millennia, found itself facing something it had never encountered: the willing cooperation of those same civilizations, united in purpose and strengthened by their differences. For the first time in its existence, the Void Hunger began to retreat. Its massive form contracted and pulled back, seeking to escape the burning touch of the life energy. But the fleet pursued, maintaining the resonance field as they advanced. "It's working," Lyra called out, her empathic senses showing her the entity's pain and confusion. "It doesn't understand how to fight something that gets stronger when we work together." The battle continued for hours, with the Void Hunger falling back system by system as the combined fleet pressed their advantage. Everywhere the resonance field touched, the damage caused by the entity began to reverse. Dead worlds started showing signs of life again. Drained stars began to shine brighter, and the very fabric of space seemed to heal from the ancient wounds. But just when victory seemed certain, the Void Hunger made one final desperate attack. Instead of trying to drain the fleet's energy, it focused all its remaining power on the source of the resonance field, the children themselves. A tendril of pure darkness shot through space, passing through shields and armor as if they didn't exist, reaching directly for Zephyr, Lyra, and Kai. Marcus threw himself between his children and the attack without thinking, his human instincts overriding any consideration for his own safety. The darkness struck him full force, and Marcus felt his life energy being pulled away. But something unexpected happened. Instead of weakening the resonance field, his sacrifice seemed to strengthen it. The love of a parent protecting his children, the determination of a human who refused to give up, and the bonds of family that transcended species. All of these emotions poured into the field, making it blaze brighter than ever. The children, seeing their father under attack, responded with power they had never displayed before. Their combined abilities, enhanced by their love for Marcus and guided by everything he had taught them about human values, created a pulse of life energy so intense that it traveled across the galaxy in seconds. The void hunger, struck by this ultimate expression of hope and love, finally broke. Its form collapsed in on itself, and with a sound like reality tearing, the ancient entity was forced. 5 years after the defeat of the void hunger, Marcus stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, watching ships from dozens of species dock peacefully in the expanded facility. What had started as a simple mining station had become the most important diplomatic and cultural center in the galaxy, a symbol of what could be achieved when different civilizations worked together. The children were no longer children, at least not in appearance. Zephyr had grown into a young man whose combination of human determination and ethereal wisdom made him one of the most sought-after mediators in galactic politics. At 19, he had already helped resolve 3 major territorial disputes and established the first interspecies university. Yet he still came to Marcus for advice about relationships and still called him father without hesitation. Lyra had become something unprecedented, a galactic empath who could facilitate understanding between species that had never been able to communicate effectively before. Her abilities had evolved to the point where she could translate not just words but emotional concepts between radically different forms of consciousness. She worked with the Galactic Council to establish new protocols for first contact with emerging civilizations, always ensuring that newcomers felt welcomed rather than overwhelmed. Kai, now 16, had revolutionized technology across dozens of worlds by teaching other species how to create symbiotic relationships with their machines rather than simply using them as tools. His innovations had led to spacecraft that were more alive than mechanical, cities that grew rather than being built, and communication networks that carried emotion and intent along with data. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the relationships between species throughout the galaxy. The victory over the void hunger had proven that cooperation wasn't just possible, but necessary for survival. Trade routes that had been established during the crisis had become permanent, leading to an unprecedented exchange of knowledge, culture, and friendship. Marcus found Serafina in their shared quarters, updating reports from the various hybrid families that had been established across the galaxy. The original experiment that had created Zephyr, Lyra, and Kai had been expanded, but now it was voluntary, on both sides, with full knowledge and consent from all participants. "How many new families this month?" Marcus asked, settling beside her. 12, Serafina replied, her silver markings showing contentment. "And Admiral Chen reports that the Earth Defense Coalition has formally approved the establishment of 3 more integration centers. Your species has adapted to the program faster than we ever expected." Marcus wasn't surprised. Humans had always been adaptable, and the proof of what hybrid families could accomplish was all around them. The children weren't just bridges between species. They were catalysts for evolution itself, helping both human and alien civilizations develop in ways neither could achieve alone. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry to their quarters. The door opened to reveal Dr. Wellspring, now the galaxy's leading expert on hybrid physiology, accompanied by a young human woman Marcus didn't recognize. "Sorry to interrupt," Dr. Wellspring said, "but I wanted to introduce you to Lieutenant Sarah Martinez. She's volunteered for the next phase of the program." The young woman stepped forward nervously. "Mr. Chen, I wanted to thank you for what your family started. My brother was saved when the void hunger attacked his research station. The resonance field your children generated reached him just in time." She paused, gathering courage. "I want to contribute to this. I want to help create more families like yours. Marcus shook her hand, remembering his own nervousness when he first encountered the children. It's not always easy, he warned gently. Raising hybrid children requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to challenge everything you think you know about parenting. But it's worth it? Lieutenant Martinez asked. Before Marcus could answer, Zephyr, Lyra, and Kai entered the quarters, having heard the conversation from the corridor. They had grown into remarkable young adults, but they still moved as a unit when family matters were involved. It's more than worth it, Zephyr said, his voice carrying the authority he had developed as a diplomatic mediator. The families that are created through this program don't just benefit the children or the parents. They create ripple effects that strengthen entire civilizations. Lyra nodded, her empathic abilities allowing her to sense Lieutenant Martinez's hopes and concerns. Every hybrid family becomes a center of understanding and cooperation. The children serve as living proof that differences can be strengths rather than barriers. Kai, ever practical, added. Plus, the technological advances that come from combining different approaches to problem-solving benefit everyone. When humans and ethereals work together, we create solutions neither species could develop alone. Lieutenant Martinez looked around at the family that had changed the galaxy, her decision clearly made. Where do I sign up? After Dr. Wellspring had taken Lieutenant Martinez to complete her application, the family gathered for their evening meal. It was a tradition they had maintained despite their increasingly busy schedules, a time when they could simply be together and share the events of their day. I received an interesting proposal today, Serafina mentioned as they settled around the table. The Galactic Council wants to establish a permanent memorial to the Battle of the Void Hunger. They're asking if our family would be willing to share our story for future generations. What kind of memorial? Marcus asked. A historical archive, Zephyr explained. Something that would preserve not just the tactical details of the battle, but the emotional journey that made victory possible. They want future generations to understand that it wasn't superior weapons or technology that saved the galaxy. It was the choice to cooperate across species barriers. Lyra smiled at her father. They want to make sure everyone remembers that it all started with a human miner who was willing to care for 3 frightened alien children simply because it was the right thing to do. Marcus felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the same feeling he had experienced when the children first called him father. I think that's important, he said. Not the part about me, but the part about choice. Every being in the galaxy has the power to decide whether they'll build bridges or walls. The memorial should help them choose bridges. That night, as Marcus and Serafina watched the stars from their quarters viewing port, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. From a chance encounter with an escape pod to becoming the center of a galactic transformation, every step had been driven by simple human values: love, compassion, and the willingness to help those in need. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had made a different choice that day? Serafina asked, as if reading his thoughts. Marcus considered the question seriously. I think about it sometimes, he admitted, but I can't imagine any other choice. The moment those children called me father, they became family. Everything else just followed from that. A soft sound from the next room indicated that Kai was working on one of his technical projects, while muted voices suggested that Zephyr and Lyra were discussing some diplomatic challenge they were facing. Even as young adults, they remained close, supporting each other through the unique challenges of being bridges between worlds. They're going to change the galaxy even more as they get older, Serafina observed. Each generation of hybrids will be more integrated, more capable of helping different species understand each other. Marcus nodded. And someday maybe species barriers won't matter at all. Maybe everyone will just be people, working together to explore the universe and protect each other from whatever threats emerge. As if summoned by their conversation, the 3 young adults entered the room, moving with the easy familiarity of a family that had shared incredible adventures and emerged stronger for it. We wanted to say goodnight, Lyra said, settling beside Serafina. Tomorrow's going to be busy with the council meetings. And the memorial planning session, Zephyr added, sitting near Marcus. They want to interview all of us about our experiences. Kai, ever the youngest despite his technical brilliance, simply climbed into the chair between his parents and closed his eyes contentedly. Looking around at his extraordinary family, Marcus realized that the greatest victory hadn't been defeating the void hunger or transforming galactic politics. It had been the simple discovery that love could transcend any barrier, species, genetics, or the vast emptiness of space itself. The children who had called him father from the moment they met had given him the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to help create a galaxy where everyone could find family among the stars.